recording.
Hi, I'm Holly Betts. I'm the program manager at the Westport Center for Senior Activities. I'm also a registered dietitian, and I have a bachelor's of science in food science and food and nutrition sciences. So welcome. We are going to talk about, this is the third section of a three-part series, and we don't think about recipes being where they came from. Maybe we think about, well, this is my grandmother's recipe, but we don't really think beyond maybe one or two generations. These recipes that we've been focusing on are actually recipes that have been around for thousands of years. And it's pretty amazing that people are still making these recipes. They've evolved over the years with different food equipment, different ovens, and also different ways to produce the product. Today, we're going to use phyllo dough. Our phyllo dough is already made, but that wasn't always the case. You had to make your own phyllo dough. So we're going to talk a little bit about phyllo, and then at the end, I want to show you a couple recipes using phyllo. People are really, it's very thin leaves of dough, and you can actually kind of see through it. It's not that hard. A lot of people have fear about using it, and so I'm going to hopefully show you that it's not that hard to do. So let's talk about the history of baklava. We'll go to the first slide. So baklava is many ethnic groups claim baklava. And basically, you can see here is Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria. It's all in the Middle East. East is where it originated from. Its origin goes back to, I have to take my glasses off. You know what, Jason? I can't see. I'm gonna have to change something.
Holly, why don't you just do it from there?
No, I have to get this screen out here. Can you do show slideshow up on the top? Slideshow, keep going right there. Go from beginning and then just go back again. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. All right, so baklava comes from, again, ancient Assyria, which is 1850 BC. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so just like there's a different opinion over baklava's origins and which part of the Middle East it comes from, the word is also disputed in what it means. The word baklava entered the English language in 1650, borrowing from the Ottoman and Turkish empires. And my problem is that, Jason, the pictures are, my pictures are not allowing me to see the words. It's covering it up. The pictures of the people. So
yeah, give me a second.
Maybe I can read from here. So the word baklava, some say baklava may come from the Mongolian root bala, which means to tie or wrap up. And according to another source, the Armenian insists that the word itself, baklava, reveals the Armenian origins of the word to be related to the Armenian word for bak, which is the word for Lent, and hava for sweet. Now, baklava was most often made, and even as Sue mentioned, that she gets it twice a year. It's not something that the people in the Middle East would make all the time. This was this very special dessert. It would be made for holidays, weddings, maybe baptisms, those kind of events in your life, and that's when they would make them. The name baklava is used in many languages. The Arab would call it baklava, and the Greeks call it baklava. So in America, because the Greeks basically brought it to America, we call it baklava. So how is it made? Originally, the Assyrians would layer unleavened flatbread with chopped nuts in between, drenching it with honey, and then baking it in primitive wood ovens. So that was really the original baklava. It was just they would make very thin bread, like a flatbread, probably not leavened, similar to like a pita, which is a Syrian bread. And then they would layer it with honey, because they wouldn't have had sugar in those days. So honey was very available. It's a natural product. And then maybe they would put some cinnamon and the nuts. Pistachios, so baklava in this country, we typically make it with walnuts, but it can be made with pistachios as well, and sometimes almonds, sometimes a mixture of all three nuts. So what we find in food history is because there were no trucks and there was no importing or exporting of goods, you cooked with what products you had in your backyard, literally. So they basically had pistachio trees, which grow in hot, dry climates. They're native to Asia Minor. Almonds go back to, mentioned in the Bible and thought to date back to 2000 BC. This was interesting in my research. It said that as time went on, we had the Silk Road, and then people would travel the Silk Road and between Greece and Turkey to barter. So they would take, the Greeks and the Turks would take their nuts and bring them to Assyria, and then they would trade for better goods because nuts were not commonly grown everywhere. So again, baklava's really ingredients is just a flour and a wheat grain-based bread with no leavening. So it means no yeast, there was no baking powder in those days, no baking soda. So it'd be a flat bread with nuts and honey, and they would layer it and then bake it in the oven. Walnuts came from the Caspian Sea in northern India. The Greeks cultivated the tree mainly for its oil, and the Romans regarded the walnut tree as sacred because, this was interesting, the walnut tree lives for 300 years. So the Romans felt that the walnut tree was sacred because it lasted many, many generations. So, and therefore it was kind of immortal, and that's why they said it was a sacred tree. So they would not have had cashews. Cashews are really from Brazil, from South America. So the nuts traditionally used in baklava, the original baklava, would have been pistachios, almonds, and walnuts, or combinations, whatever kind of they had. All right, we'll take the next slide. So now we have the Ottoman Empire, and baklava was actually, so this is the palace in Istanbul, and the palace chefs, they actually, they had pastry chefs. So this is the first time that we see division of duty. Again, at this point, baklava is only for the rich. So only the people who lived in palaces and grand homes and had personal chefs would have eaten baklava. And so it was considered a rich person's food. So actually then in the Ottoman Empire, they really now made it into more like what we know today. And that is, now it's not just a bread dough. Now they've made this dough that you can pretty much see through, and that's called phyllo. So phyllo was a dish for the rich. Is the next slide. In the 19th century, it was thought of a luxury dessert. It was for the very wealthy. Again, as I said before, it's a special occasion dessert made for religious events such as weddings. And I think, you know, when I think about my grandparents' generation, and maybe I didn't really know my great-grandparents very well. I knew one of them, and she was pretty old when I was young. But there's certain recipes that you have in your family that are traditional for, again, for holidays. Could be like, I know in my family, if we have a wedding, we make those little what we call Mexican wedding cookies, or they're sometimes called Russian tea cakes, the brown nuts. We don't make those like my mother would make chocolate chip cookies throughout the year, but we did our special cookies, our special desserts we had at holidays. And it's the same for baklava. So it's, I thought this was interesting. To this day, it's a very common expression. In Turkey, to say, I am not rich enough to eat baklava every day. And apparently that's still a kind of a slogan that they use in Turkey today. I am not rich enough to eat baklava every day. So they still consider this to be a really fancy dessert. Now, another reason for that is that before we had, we could go and buy phyllo dough. Can you guys see that? They can't see this, right? If you go buy phyllo today, it's all made. It's all ready to go. And that's why when I show you how to use it, this is a pretty easy recipe. But before this, you had to make your own phyllo dough. And when I was, gosh, I think I was in my teens, I decided I wanted to bake all kinds of different things and learn different techniques in baking. And I kind of would find a recipe. So I made my own strudel dough. My grandparents were German. And we would make the dough, and then you'd have 3 or 4 people around a table, and you just pull it with your hands and stretch it until you can see through to the tablecloth. And that's basically what phyllo is. It's very, very much the same as making strudel from scratch. If you're Austrian or from Bavaria, or you're from Germany, that's what they would do to get a flaky dough. And now today, if you were to make apple strudel or peach strudel, whatever kind of strudel you want to make, you would buy phyllo dough already done. So that kind of changes everything. That, baklava was a very special dessert because it took a lot of time, because you had to make the dough, and then you had to make all the ingredients, you had to assemble it and cook it. So it made it more of a production, and that's why, again, it wasn't an everyday dish. But now that you can go out, and in America, we go out, we buy the dough, you can make it anytime. I still think most Americans probably, and mostly Greek or, again, Turkish, Middle Eastern Americans would make baklava not all the time, but as a special treat. Okay, so next slide. So classic Greek baklava, there's a picture of it. Again, it's the phyllo dough, it's nuts and cinnamon. I did give a recipe out. If you got the Zoom link, you should have gotten that with the link today. And then at the end, we pour this honey sugar syrup over it, and it seeps through. It's a very sweet dessert. And again, it's not a lot of ingredients, so we'll talk about that when I make it. Next slide. So again, this is the Ottoman Empire. They had pastry chefs who, in the palaces, who would make it for dessert. This particular one, you can see the nuts are kind of green. That they would have used pistachios in this particular one. So you can go to the next slide. So I included this. We're not going to watch this because I'm going to kind of show you how to do it. But if you want to go back and look at it, this is a nice little demo on how to make baklava. We can go to the next slide. Yep, okay. Now, Jason, you can go to, so what I found on the internet when I was doing my research is this video, and I think this is really neat. He is a senior living in Italy, and he was making homemade phyllo dough pretty much until the end of his life. And I think he's 86 in this particular video. I'm not sure if he's still alive, but people started buying phyllo. And so people were going to his bakery to buy his homemade phyllo dough. So then they said, well, let's make it kind of a tourist thing because nobody was coming. So they advertised, come watch. They put windows up and people could watch him make phyllo, and people would come and watch him make phyllo, and then they would buy his phyllo. So this is a video. This gentleman, it just makes, I mean, he's 86. He's still making he was still making homemade phyllo dough in Greece. So we'll play this video. I don't think it's too long. 7 minutes.
Making phyllo by hand can take up to 4 hours. The super thin, layered dough is used in many dishes in Greek cuisine, like the famous baklava. And at 86 years old, Yurios Hatziparaskos is one of the few bakers in Greece that still makes it manually. He started baking as a teenager and was able to buy his own workshop in the 1960s. At one point, bakeries like his were all over Greece. But the rise of cheap and efficient industrial baking meant that many mom-and-pop shops just couldn't stay afloat. Yurios found a way to stay in business by focusing on the tourist trade and employing only his wife Katerina and his son Paraskevas. We visited their half-century-old bakery to see how it is still standing. Every day around 8 a.m., Yurios opens the doors to their workshop, and Katerina hangs signs to draw people in. The 17th century Venetian-style house stands in the heart of the old town in Rethymno on the Greek island of Crete. To start the phyllo dough, Yorgos puts just 3 ingredients into a large mixer: flour, water, and salt. Half an hour later, he transfers the mixture to this roller machine to be flattened and stretched. Paraskevas portions out smaller pieces that need to be exactly
1 kilo, 300.
Αυτό έχει να κάνει με τις διαστάσεις του τραπεζιού στο οποίο θα το ανοίξουμε. Αν το τραπέζι ήταν μεγαλύτερο, θα ήθελε περισσότερη ζύμη, οπότε θα βάζαμε παραπάνω ζυμάρι.
While father and son knead the dough balls, mother cooks lunch. Yorgos rolls each piece by hand, shaping them into discs. Then it's time for the toss. There is a reason behind this eye-catching technique.
Το βοηθάει να γίνει λίγο πιο λεπτό στη μέση, επειδή το χοντρό κομμάτι μένει στην άκρη που το τραβάς. Να μην μείνει πολύ χοντρό στη μέση.
The dough is stretched over and over again until the whole table is covered. It becomes so thin, you can read through it. Katerina covers each dough layer with linen to absorb moisture slowly without losing elasticity. Then, the family repeats the process layer by layer until there's several tissue-thin sheets stacked on each table. Going round and round the table is so physically demanding that Yorgos has to rest in between turns.
Είναι πολύ σκληρή η δουλειά και το φύλλο.
Once the dough is slightly dry, it's ready to be folded. For the hatsaparaskoses, it's almost like a dance, with precisely coordinated movements, including a dusting of flour to prevent the sheets from sticking together. The phyllo leaves are then cut to size to be stored in the fridge until they're sold. But all this work doesn't guarantee big sales.
Εκείνο το φύλλο που μαζέψαν και ρωτούσαν και λέει 320 φύλλα, του είπα ζήτημα να είναι 12 κιλά. Αν τα δώσεις ζαχαροπλαστείο είναι 60 ευρώ.
So the family's profits rely mostly on the sweets sold to tourists that come in curious to see how phyllo is handmade.
Πριν 10 χρόνια ή πιο παλιά είχαμε πάνω από 100 ξενοδοχεία πελάτες. Αλλά η εκβιομηχάνηση σιγά σιγά τους έκανε να αγοράζουν τα έτοιμα προϊόντα.
Machine-made phyllo is cheaper and faster. Efficient industrial production lines can churn out 100 to 300 kilograms of dough an hour. The stiff competition doesn't deter Yorgos. He also makes kataifi, a shredded pastry that is even more taxing for the 86-year-old. It takes him 3 hours, and it sells for even less than the traditional sheets of phyllo.
Βγάζουμε λίγο γιατί οι τουρίστες που έρχονται να το δούνε, να βγάλουν μια φωτογραφία και πουλάμε γλυκά. Δύσκολο, μπορεί να μην το πετύχει, να το πετάξει όλο. Όλο έτσι. Βράδυ που πονάμε.
Και κάποιες φορές αν νιώθεις κουρασμένος, βλέποντάς το να συνεχίζει σε αυτήν την ηλικία να δουλεύει, ξεχνάς την κούραση και συνεχίζεις κι εσύ.
Paraskevas is actually an engineer, but he found himself without a job after the 2010 economic crisis in Greece. So he decided to help his parents with the family business.
Ούτε εγώ δεν περίμενα που θα φτάξω. Έλεγα άμα πάω στα 60 χρόνια, 65, θα βάλω και το στρατό να πάρω τη σύνταξη να κάτσω. Μετά λέω άντε ακόμα άλλα 5 χρόνια, άντε άλλα 5 χρόνια.
Just as Yorgos' business depends on tourism, he too loves to travel when he can.
Αγγλία, Αούστρια, Βιέννα, Γαλλία, Ουγγάρια, Βουδαπέστη, Ισπάνια, Μαρόκο. Εδώ πέρα δουλεύω και δεν μένει χρόνος να βγω καθόλου. Μία εβδομάδα φεύγω και πάω έξω και έτσι λέω στον τουρίστα, τουρίστα εσύ, τουρίστα και εμείς.
If it weren't for the COVID-19 pandemic, he would have visited the Netherlands to see friends he made when they visited his shop year after year. Greece was quick to control the spread of the virus from the spring through the summer, but cases have spiked in the fall and brought the country to a nationwide second lockdown in November. Tourist traffic to the Hatsaparaskos' workshop has dropped significantly in 2020. Lines to get in weren't uncommon in better years.
Εσύ ξέρεις από κρου που ήταν. Όταν έφεραν σε ένα κρου που ήταν 20 άτομα, ήταν πιο ελεύθερα.
But it still remains an important landmark for the community, and locals will say it's the town's main attraction.
Το 2007 τέτοιο καιρό, τη γιορτή τουρισμού, στις 27 Σεπτεμβρίου, μας βράβευσε στον κήπο ο Δήμος Ρεθύμνης για την προσφορά μας στον τουρισμό. Το βραβείο του καλού επαγγελματία. Ο Δήμαρχος εδάκρυσε, διότι είπα ευχαριστώ το Δήμο και αυτό ήρθα από τόσα χρόνια που αυτό, τα τουριστικά γραφεία, τους ξεναγούς, τα μέσα αυτά που με κάνουν διάστημα και τελευταίως τη σύζυγό μου.
Πιστεύω αυτό ικανοποιεί και τους γονείς και ειδικά τον πατέρα μου που χαίρεται που κάποιος θα το συνεχίσει. Ελπίζω και κάποιο από τα παιδιά μου να έρθουν έτσι τα πράγματα ώστε να ασχοληθεί επαγγελματικά.
A 17th century inscription above the door has been there since long before the family moved in, and it served as a reminder of the importance of their work. In virtue, a house shines.
I hope you enjoyed that, and I think that he's remarkable, and he just needed a purpose in his life, and it's pretty neat. So you can see how much work it is to make homemade phyllo. Nobody really does that anymore, but we buy it. So now what we're going to do is just go through a couple recipes, and instead of making baklava, traditional baklava, which is layer, what you do is you take the phyllo dough. Take 2 layers of phyllo dough, put some butter between every layer, you brush it with butter, then you'll put some nuts and cinnamon, it's just nuts and cinnamon, and then more layers, and then we bake that in the oven in a square dish, and then when it comes out of the oven, you pour the syrup. So before you got here today, I made the honey syrup, and you have a recipe here. It's honey, lemon juice, and water and sugar. It gets you stir it until the sugar melts, and then you boil it without stirring for 4 minutes, and then you let it cool. So this has now been cooled. Then the other thing that we need is melted butter. So this is actually 3 sticks of melted butter. I was just kind of estimating, and hopefully that's going to be enough. But baklava, again, doesn't have a lot of ingredients. It's the phyllo dough, the nuts, the cinnamon, the honey syrup, and butter, and that's it. So pretty simple. It's not like you have to buy a lot of fancy ingredients to make it. When I was, my niece was getting married, and she's actually at Yale New Haven right now having a baby. I'm waiting to hear, but she got married 2 years ago, and we decided I catered her rehearsal dinner, and we decided on a Mediterranean theme. So we had a Mediterranean kind of buffet, and then I wanted to do dessert, and I wanted to do baklava, but when people are standing around, it was kind of a picnic. It's very hard to eat. It's messy, it's sweet, it's sticky, and I really wanted finger food. So I decided to take the baklava filling and make it into a cookie that they could just pick up and eat. So I'm going to show you how to make those. They can all be done. Anything with phyllo dough can be done, and then you can put it in the freezer, and then when guests come, you pull them out and you put them in the oven and bake them for about 20 minutes. So that they're fresh. So that's one really nice thing about baklava is you don't have to, you can do all the phyllo's recipes ahead of time. Then I found this one. I've never done this before. These are called baklava cups, and I'll show you how we make those. This is a new thing. I bought, let's see if you can see. This is, actually they're already made. So, so these are just little cups. They're already cooked, and you buy them in the frozen section of the Stop and Shop has in the grocery store, and you can fill them with anything. Savory for an appetizer. This recipe just has the nuts, and then you're gonna bake them in the oven with the nuts and the sugar, and then you're gonna, at the end when they come out, you put a little teaspoon of the syrup, the baklava syrup in it, and let them set up for probably about 6 hours, they say, so it just kind of all oozes together. And then you can drizzle with chocolate if you want to make them fancy. So we're going to make a couple of those. And then we're going to make what I made for my niece's wedding, which is, I call them baklava cookies. And this is a traditional, I kind of want to show you this too, the traditional fold. So we're going to make triangles. So sometimes when you go to a party, guys see that? Triangles, yeah. So we're gonna, when you go to a party, sometimes we'll have the Spinach triangles, or you can buy those at the grocery store already made. I'm gonna show you how to fold those. You can put it, and you can also put the nut filling from the baklava in it, mix a little bit of syrup in it, and then we'll fold them. Then we'll show you how to fold them, and then you can put them in the freezer, or you can just bake them. And then at the end, when they come out of the oven, we'll just sprinkle them with some powdered sugar. And that makes kind of a baklava dessert, but it's finger food. It's not so messy and delicious. So, all right, let's get started. And I'm going to just really talk to you about how to use Phyllo. So Phyllo comes in a box, and there's 2 rolls to a box. And again, as they said in the video, it's thin enough that you could read through it. So it's a very, very thin dough. Because it's thin, and that's one of the things that makes it a little tricky to use, is that it dries out, and you don't want it to dry out. So I'm going to unwrap it. This is plastic wrap here, and we're going to unwrap it. This looks like it's in pretty good shape. It comes frozen. You will have to defrost it in your refrigerator for 24 hours before you can use it. Otherwise, it will not work. It's looking pretty good. Let's see. What we're going to do is I'll put it this way. And we are going to have a damp towel. So this is just a little bit damp. We put that on top. So while we're not working with the big stack, we're going to keep this nice and damp. And now I think what I'll do is I'll put some parchment on my paper here. Okay, so we are going to make baklava cookies, and we need to make the filling. So the filling is ground, that's ground walnuts. They're pretty finely ground, and some cinnamon. I ground them in the Cuisinart mixer. We're going to mix this up. Again, this is my filling for baklava cookies. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour just a little bit of this syrup in, just to kind of bind it together. So we'll do a little bit at a time. You want to make it a little bit sticky, so it kind of holds together. A little more in. Now, cinnamon is something also that comes from the Middle East. So again, that would have been the flavoring, because that was something that they had. We're going to just make this so it's wet and kind of sticks together. And you don't need a lot of filling. This, you do about 1 teaspoon of this per cookie. So, okay, so that's it. So it's just ground nuts. There's no sugar in here because the cinnamon is, the honey is acting as your sweetener. You don't need sugar in this one. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the Phyllo, and I'm going to take 1 sheet. This is the very thin sheet. I'm going to put it down on my board. I'm going to cover this up. Stays nice and damp. I'm going to take my brush. This is a silicone brush, and a little bit of butter. And I'll just dab it. You don't have to you don't have to have every inch of this dough. That's going to happen. You're going to pull it back a little bit. Not every inch of dough has to be, and really I just pat it, because if you try to do this, it'll rip the dough. So just pat it, try and get the edges. And that's my first layer. We want to do 5 layers per cookie. So we're going to we'll now unfold this back. And now I'm going to try and pick up another layer. This is layer 2 that goes on top. Bring it up. There we go. Butter. So, what we've learned kind of is every country sort of has the same dish. And in pastry, in France, they have puff pastry. In Germany and Bavaria, that area, they have strudel dough. And this is all very, very flaky dough. And it's just different methods of doing it. And then in the Middle East, we have phyllo dough. So,
Holly, your phone fell asleep. Can you restart it when you get a chance.
Oh, my phone has a low battery, Jason.
Okay, it's okay. It should be fine.
Put another sheet in, that's number 3. Again, I'm just gonna dab it. Butter. Sort of have to work kind of quickly because it will again dry out if you don't. But putting the butter on it will make it not dry out. So as soon as we have the butter on it, we don't kind of worry too much. So this is layer 4. This one's kind of sticky. So let's see if we can get this one off. Oh, this one's gonna come off. Oops. This is 4. Okay. All right, so this is gonna be our last layer. Okay. Well, okay, so now that is, we're gonna do one more thing of a little bit of butter again. Now, if I was making spanakopita triangles, I would do half butter and half olive oil. It just cuts down on the fat and it tastes fine. But since this is a sweet cookie, I'm going to do more butter. So now what we do is we're going to make our cookies. And I'm going to go this way. We'll turn it sideways. No, I think I'll do lengthwise. Okay, lengthwise. So we're going to do half with my pizza cutter. I'll cut it in half. And then I'm going to cut the halves, so we're going to do quarters, lengths, all the way down. There we go. Okay. So now we have a strip. And we're going to take a spoon. We're going to take a little bit of this filling. This is the walnuts, honey, and the honey syrup and some cinnamon. Not too much. And now what we do is we're going to fold the top corner over into a triangle. And then we fold it this way. I don't know if you were kids, you did it. Jason, you made like footballs out of paper. This is sort of what that is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do half of this sheet. That's a cookie. And then I will start this way. So I'm going to make 2 cookies from each strip. And this cookie is going to get in here. And again, we fold over so that we form a triangle. And the idea is you just fold it so that you can see, I don't know if this is still open. So we have to make sure that it's all closed up. And then we just fold it over. And sometimes you get a little piece there, so we just cut that off. That is it. And then we'll do 2 more here. And a little bit of nuts. And I'm going to bring the corner over. Tuck the filling in. Then we're going to do this. We'll just roll it, keep making triangles until it's completely sealed. That one's sealed. So that way, maybe I should show it here. So every side is now sealed. And we'll do more here again. And we're just gonna roll them over. Then there's no, you know, it's a lot of cookies you have to do the rolling pin, and you're kind of forcing with the rolling pin. This is all done for you, so not very hard to do. What I will do is I will put a damp cloth over my cookies so they don't dry out right now while I'm working. I'll just do a couple more cookies here, and then I'll show you how to make the baklava cups.
Does anybody have any questions while Holly's doing this? You can unmute yourself and ask her.
Yeah, ask questions.
Well, I'll ask a question. The video, Holly, that gentleman was amazing at the work he was doing. That was a massive amount of work just for a little bit amount of money.
A little money, yeah.
So what machines do they use now that has replaced him?
So they have industrial machines that roll the dough, so it's paper thin. I think that's the big change. One more strip here, and then we'll move on to the baklava cups.
Was this a big hit at your party or your niece?
Yeah, I didn't have any leftovers. We actually had this cookie, and then we had my sister-in-law made the Russian tea cakes, or what people call Mexican wedding cakes. Then I had watermelon, so it was nice. Our last one. There we go. So then those 5 sheets of dough made 3, 4, 5, there's 6, 8 cookies. I am gonna brush them a little bit on the top so they don't dry out. Butter on them. And then you cook them in a 350 oven. They cook for about 15 minutes. If they're frozen, they'll cook a little longer, but other side. Brush them. This one doesn't want to stick, so I'll just put a little butter in and that'll make it stick. And this one, oh. Great. That's it. And then these, now at this point, you can put these in the freezer on a flat sheet and then freeze them. And then once they're frozen, you can just put them in a baggie, like a Ziploc bag, and freeze them. And then when somebody comes, put them out on the on your cookie tray, let them probably come to temperature about a half hour, and then put them in the oven at 350. Then you have a nice fresh cookie. That's that one. Now, let's do, so the baklava cups. This was a recipe. Again, these cups are already done for you, and they're already cooked. So what they want you to do is just put the nut mixture in here. And I'm just going to use this nut mixture, so I'll just put it in. Well, actually, yeah. So you put the nut mixture in, you put these in the oven. When they come out, you'll put the syrup, a teaspoon of syrup in, and let it, seep in, and that's it. So these are pretty easy. If you want to be fancy, you can drizzle some chocolate on them. And that's your baklava cookies. So it's kind of something different. And what I thought I would show you is I decided, if you got the handouts, I have a recipe for Mrs. Avis's Greek spinach pie. And I've cooked from this cookbook for you before. It's the Victory Garden cookbook. And it's Marion Morash. Her husband's Russell Morash, who started the This Old House programs at WBGBH in Boston. And she was on a TV show that her husband's produced called The Victory Garden. And she was the cooking segment. And then she did this cookbook. And it's the best vegetable cookbook I've ever had. It's all about vegetables. So this is her husband's, one of his favorite recipes. So phyllo dough can be used for sweets like baklava or cookies or strudel. You could actually make a nice apple strudel with it, just like you would. That's what the Germans do now. They really buy the phyllo dough. They don't make their own strudel dough. But this is a savory dish. So this is basically spanakopita. It's a spinach pie. It's spinach, feta, and cottage cheese or ricotta cheese, eggs, and onion.
Could you
And I
say
just
her
wanna
name
show-
again? Could you
Excuse
say her name again?
Oh, her name is Marion Morash. and it's called the Victory Garden Cookbook. It's from 1992, but it's I think you can still get it on Amazon used, and I see them at book sales. I just bought Jason one. I saw it at the book sale recently.
Good.
Yes, Doris?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, anyway, sometimes I'll make this, and then what I like about it is there's two things we can do with it. We can make large turnovers, which is the same method that we did for those cookies I just made. And then you freeze them. And then if my husband and if I want a quick dinner, I'll get 2 turnovers out of the freezer and have a nice tossed salad with it. Makes a nice dinner. And again, it's something to be made ahead. Or you can make it as a pie, and that's what I'm going to show you how to make the pie because it's so easy. And if you get phyllo dough that's a little finicky to use or it rips and stuff, this recipe you don't have to worry about it as much when you're making the spanakopita. So we're going to make just a little spanakopita, and what we're going to do is we're going to butter I'm just going to use a foil tin from the grocery store, and so I will butter the tin so things don't stick, and it kind of takes care of the dough. And what we're going to do is, again, we're going to uncover our phyllo dough. This particular size, I think I'm going to cut the dough in half. So this dough is getting a little sticky together, but that's okay because this dish is pretty easy to do. We're just going to cut it, and we'll put a layer in our pan. We don't have to be real fancy about it. Just make it stick to the sides. And then I'm going to do a little more butter. Not a lot, I just kind of dab it. Try and get this up a little bit higher on the side. What we'll do is, so I put one this way, the next one's going to go the opposite way so that we kind of work our way up the sides of the pan. So that's going to go there. If you let the phyllo dough sit out in the air, within about half an hour or 20 minutes, it'll get hard and crispy. So you want to make sure you keep it under the damp towel. So here, so this one got kind of, no, unfolded. So again, we'll cut it in half. And we'll go the other way. So this is going to go this way. That's 3 layers. And this will be number 4. We'll do 5 layers on the bottom. Make sure that I get the butter on the edges, otherwise, again, it's going to dry out. One more.
Holly, you couldn't use olive oil, right?
Yes, so when I do a savory dish, I do half olive oil and half butter, or you can do maybe 1/3 butter and 2/3 olive oil. I wouldn't do all olive oil because I think you need the butter flavor, but you certainly can cut it back, yes, and make it healthier. That's correct. Okay, so this is my last bottom layer. Again, we'll just put a little butter in it. Okay, now at home last night I made my filling. This is actually I use frozen spinach, and so you defrost the frozen spinach and then take like 2 layers of paper towels and squeeze all the water out of it. It's very important that the spinach is very dry for this dish. The other option, if you're going to use fresh spinach, is saute it in a little bit of olive oil, and that sauteing will drive the water out and it becomes dry. So you want a very dry spinach. And so this is spinach, onions, ricotta cheese. I did cook the onions in advance. I sauteed them in a little olive oil, and feta cheese. And it's and eggs. Eggs will hold it together.
Are we going to get your recipe?
Yeah, the recipe is Jason sent those out.
Okay.
So.
If you didn't get it, Doris, let me know and I'll send it to you.
Thanks.
So I don't know, can you guys see that? No, maybe I have to do this one. So, okay, so we filled it up and now we just put another layer of dough on. We can do 3 or 4 at the top. Here we are. Half. Again, this isn't something that, I would make every night, but again, every now and then I'll make some for the freezer. And it's just something we have. We'll put one more layer on and then we'll call it that. Half a sheet. And again, don't worry if it tears. You can just kind of patch it together for this recipe because you're just layering it on top. And once it cooks, no one's going to know that it ripped. I got a little rip here, but that doesn't really bother me too much. I'm just going to layer it on top. That's it. So that's spanakopita. And what I'll do is I will actually take scissors and I'm going to cut the dough. Went over the pan. Okay. A little bit of too much, but we'll just put a little bit on. Okay. That's it. That is spanakopita. This goes in the oven, it gets baked, and that's it. I'm gonna have to,
How long do you bake that?
oh, it's like, what did she say? 375 for 15 minutes and then 350 for 30 minutes. But I find this size goes pretty quickly, so I'm just gonna, I want to seal it up so it doesn't dry out. And this will either go in the freezer or goes in the oven tonight. But I want to show you just one more thing, and it won't take long, but this is actually, it's kind of interesting. Like this is now getting crispy. I can feel it's drying out on me. All right, so one last thing is with the spanakopita, if you don't want to do a pie, you can make like a turnover for lunch. So what we would do is take the sheet and again, we're gonna do a little bit of butter. And as Doris said, you can use olive oil, but I would put a little bit of butter in for flavor. But if you want to have a little less saturated fat, then you can do that. I'm going to do 5 layers. I hope you can see that, it's nothing, this dough is nothing to be afraid of. It's not really that hard. The trick is 24 hours in the fridge before you start using it. So it's defrosted completely. 3, 4.
And by the looks of it, the main problem is that it dries out.
It dries out. You got to work a little bit,
So
or you just keep it covered with a damp towel.
how much baklava has been ruined by dryness, Holly?
Go ahead.
How much baklava has been ruined by drying out?
Well, I know that's as I said, that's kind of the big trick is just moving. Okay, this is my last layer. Go. And these, if you're single or you're just serving for 2 people, you don't want to make that whole pie. The pie, if we have leftover and have it for the second night, it's not as good because it's not going to be as crispy on the crust. That's why I kind of like doing the turnovers. So this one will just, if it's gonna be a luncheon turnover, we're just gonna cut this dough in half. My pizza cutter. Gonna take some of the spanakopita filling, plop it in there. And then again, it's the same procedure we did with the cookie. You fold it into a triangle, fold it over. Go. Probably have to seal it a little bit. That's it. One more here. And these, again, they can be frozen and you have somebody over for company, cook them up and then have a salad with it. Makes a nice little meal. You think you did something really fancy. That's it. Anybody have questions? No? Well, thank
Is
you.
this, yeah, just, I don't really have the recipe. I don't have the recipe in front of me at all. I hope I have it, but
Okay.
do you have any feta cheese in it or just ricotta?
No, it's feta.
Feta,
Spinach.
oh,
Spinach, feta, onions, and eggs, and salt and pepper. Am I missing anything? That's it.
okay,
And then
okay.
the spinach.
All right, I didn't hear right, okay.
Yeah, the feta gives it a little sour taste to it. So,
Holly?
and you want to make hors d'oeuvres, you take the same filling and you can make the little ones the size of the cookie, and then that's a nice past hors d'oeuvre.
No, this is really nice. I'm
Yeah.
gonna make that. I used to make it. I think the secret is 5 layers.
Yes,
That's what I
9
like.
layers is enough.
So this video will be on our YouTube channel as well. So if you missed something, you can go back and watch it.
Holly?
Yes.
I would like to ask a question about the granola that you made that had the peanut butter, banana, and the chocolate chips in it. And then you bake it for a while in the oven.
That was a long time ago.
Oh, it was a very long time ago, and I make it constantly. And
Good.
like to substitute instead of banana. I know we probably need the peanut butter to hold it together, but what else can I put in to make the granola bars? I'm tired of the recipe. I want to change it around.
Besides,
Blueberries, could I do that?
I think if you look on the internet, you might find a recipe that would have use applesauce, but you'd have to get a different. Wouldn't be the same recipe because the consistency of applesauce is not the same as mashed banana. But I know that there are granola bars you can make with applesauce.
Yes. But what other can I make? Can I put in strawberries, blueberries, any other?
No, because they just don't have the body that you need. You need that body from the mashed banana.
Even if I use dried fruit?
You'd have to try it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I would say you still need something with the consistency of
To hold it together, yes.
Molasses?
maybe a little bit. That's going to be a little bitter, but yes,
A little
Yeah.
molasses? Is that
that's going to add sweetness to it. And molasses has the sulfur, the little bitterness to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of liquidy though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Sweet also.
It's
Other
sweet. Yeah,
No?
it's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
So if they want to pick up treats, Holly, when should they come
Not
by?
tomorrow. They'd have to come Monday soon.
Yes, tomorrow the parking lot is getting its second coat of pavement.
So Monday, if you would like some of this delicious food that Holly made.
Or actually, Holly, if you want to just cook them up, if not many people on the call, we can deliver them.
We could, yeah.
How about service? Because I'm not so sure Monday's a home run with the parking lot as well. So
Okay.
we could drop them off.
Okay, so that would be, who's on the call? Darlene and Doris?
And Virginia
Virginia.
and Gloria.
What is it that you're gonna deliver?
We'll deliver some cookies.
Oh, that, I don't need those, but Jason, could you send that recipe again?
Of course, no problem at all.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, because I'm gonna make it for, I really want to make it. The spanakopita.
Spanakopita, yes, it's delicious.
I
Good
know-
job,
Thank you,
Holly and
everybody, for
Jason.
I
coming.
bet, Sue, I bet Chris Crane can make spanakopita.
Well, if you want her to be a guest person, chef,
Good.
I can certainly ask her and bribe her with a 12-pack of craft beer.
Okay. We should actually have her do a Greek dish for us. That'd be great.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. And
Thank
get
you.
outside.
Thank
It's
you.
beautiful outside.
Thank you.
Thank
problem.
you. Good job.
Okay, bye-bye.
Great job. Great. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, Doris.